Last year, plenty of Bears fans wanted to see what it would be like if Blake Shapen, their quarterback, could run the Art Briles offense. Well, now they will. It's just not at Baylor. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining us for another bonus episode of Locked On Baylor. I'm your host, Cam Stewart. Blake Shapen, Baylor starting quarterback who entered the transfer portal last week, although he was still being talked to and courted a little bit by new OC Jake Spavital, has found his new destination, and it's in the SEC. He announced last night that he would be going to Mississippi State to play for Jeff Lebby, who just got the head coaching job out in Stark Vegas. Not a surprising move that he ends up deciding to leave from Baylor, but one that, you know, at least the new coaching staff here with Spavital, and I know Aranda had talked about it as well, sounded like something that wasn't definite yet, even though he put his name in the portal at the beginning of the week, so much so that some sucker who runs Locked On Baylor did a show on Friday all about what it would be like if Blake Shapen did actually come back and if he was Baylor's best option. But this is not a surprising move to see him go elsewhere. Now, there are some things that are surprising about this. First of which being, and this is just kind of a weird idiosyncrasy of it, I guess, is that he, coming out of high school in Louisiana, did not have a SEC offer, according to 24/7. He had just Pac-12 and Baylor. I think it was Arizona State, UCLA, USC, someone else, Baylor. No SEC for a kid from Louisiana, which is interesting. Now, through a pretty okay career at Baylor, 2 years starting, he gets the nod from an SEC team in Mississippi State. Now, what is interesting to me and what stuck, couldn't decide on stood or stuck there, stuck out to me was the offense that he's going to be running at Mississippi State with Jeff Lebby. Now, it is a little bit different from what he ran at Baylor and that kind of that veer and shoot offense that Art Briles ran, and obviously Lebby, a direct disciple of that. But he has adjusted a little bit over the years, and I wouldn't be surprised if he adjusts it a little bit once more, because that's what good offensive coordinators do, especially when they're in their first year as a head coach and they need to adjust a little bit to the personnel. But based off what it already is, Shapen, I originally thought was going to be a bad fit for that. But the more I look into it, it's not that bad because of how much the veer and shoot has changed. Now, the one noticeable thing about it is he doesn't have that strong an arm. It's not even as it's not even as strong as Dylan Gabriel's arm was last year when he was still recovering from the surgery and didn't have nearly the numbers he put up this year at Oklahoma. So he doesn't, and that's not going to get fixed overnight. He doesn't have a strong arm. He's not a big kid. He's not someone I don't think would have been recruited by Art Briles or Kendall Briles or Philip Montgomery in the glory days of the veer and shoot. So that's one thing that still sticks off the page to me and is one that can't be taken lightly. But one thing we did see from him, from Shapen, that was successful this year for a not very good Baylor offense, was the tempo. They didn't have greatness at receiver. They didn't have a great offensive line. They didn't have much of a run game. They were down all the time. And one thing that kind of worked in the middle of the season, I'm thinking specifically that win over UCF, the game against Houston, the win against Cincinnati, was when they put in some tempo into the offense. And they did use it against Texas Tech as well, which was a blowout loss, to be fair. Was the tempo offense, especially in that second half against UCF when they make the 28-point comeback. And we're thinking, okay, finally they have not only won this dramatic game, but they found a little bit of an identity in this offense for Blake Shapen, and that is running up tempo, no huddle stuff. That is going to be a big part of what they run at Mississippi State. Now, it's not as quick as it was with the Briles offense. That was really quick. It's not like that. He's not doing tempo for tempo's sake. He is Jeff Lebby, that is willing to slow it down just a little bit to get different looks at the defense and get the right personnel in the game. But it is still a no huddle kind of offense that he's going to run. And that's something that Shapen actually really thrived in last year. And the other thing that stuck out to me was that in the evolution of this offense is that it has more RPOs now. That's just how the game has changed in football. Everyone's got more RPOs now. And I think that's something that does play into Blake Shapen's strength, not just because I think he's a decent runner. You won't necessarily know that from the stats, but if you watch the games, he's a decent runner. Wouldn't call him necessarily a dual threat in that true sense. But what it does do is it forces Shapen to make decisions once the play has already started, which I think he's actually not that bad at. That's why he did show some elusiveness in the pocket the last 2 years. Again, not a huge runner, but he is able to make decisions on the fly, and that's something that he really actually improved on from 2022 to this year in 2023. Was just his overall decision making was much better. He put the ball in harm's way a lot less, put himself in harm's way a lot less, and so I think that is going to play into his strength a little bit. And this is a kid that Lebby has more or less seen twice. Now, I don't know how much he's keen on it as being the offensive coordinator and watching the other team's offense, but he did see Shapen have a pretty good game in a win in Norman last year. And for that Sugar Bowl that Baylor played against Ole Miss, it was still up in the air whether it was going to be Shapen or Gary Bohannon at quarterback. So Ole Miss would have needed to do tape on Shapen as well, coming off what ends up still probably being his best game in a Baylor uniform, the 2021 Big 12 championship, where he starts 17 for 17 and Baylor wins the conference championship. So that's kind of the positive side. Now, I know there's a lot of Mississippi State fans tuning in for this, so that's the positives to take away from it. Now, I mentioned pocket elusiveness that only got him so far, and I say that to say I thought Shapen had a good year. A lot of Baylor fans will tell you that, and he was gutsy, but there was just only so much he could do with the problems that I just mentioned a few minutes ago of the non-existent offensive line, the lack of weapons on the outside, and lack of consistency from the weapons he did have, and the defense just not giving him any favors whatsoever, making them a predictable offense. And one of the numbers that shows that is he was sacked more than any other quarterback in the Big 12, 25 times in 8 games. Over 3 sacks a game when he was actually out there, and got 2 injuries because of that. I had to miss 4 games, obviously, including the last one of the season. But you look at his career numbers in, I think it's 23 games, 5,500 yards, 36 touchdowns, 13 picks. Most transfer portal situations, most teams that are looking for a starting quarterback in the transfer portal are going to take that. 9 times out of 10, they're going to love that. And Mississippi State, I don't know that they're desperate, but they did just have their starter enter the portal as well in Will Rogers. So they need a guy who's going to come in here and start. That is the first priority for Jeff Lebby as he comes in here. And it looks like he's got his guy, and that's Blake Shapen. But for all the heroics that he was able to perform this year, and look, I'm not making him out to be Brady in 07 or anything. But he did have a good year and was a bright spot at times for Baylor. But at the end of the day, they went 3-9. And so I think he was ready for something new. And I think Baylor's probably ready for something new too. Again, not that Shapen was bad, but you've got a new OC in here. You've got a head coach who is on his last lifeline. And for the fans' sake, I think they were all ready for a huge new change in this football program. Now, we thought it was going to be firing the head coach and getting an entire new regime in here. Instead, it's firing your offensive coordinator, firing your running backs coach, firing your offensive line coach because it's everyone but the head coach's fault, and your quarterback leaves in the transfer portal. So that's something for Baylor fans to look at in terms of change. Whether it's Sawyer Robertson at quarterback or they go into the portal for a starter, we'll see. That's something that we're going to focus on the show on Monday. But Baylor fans, let me know what you think about this. Shapen, Mississippi State, he's not at least not going to be in the Big 12, right? And Mississippi State fans, I know you're here. Tell me what you think. I know you've looked into this a little bit about this kid. You're not locked in on basketball season. I get that. So you're locking in on who this next quarterback is going to be. And he might not jump off the page size-wise, but then again, neither did Dylan Gabriel. And he did pretty well 2 times in Jeff Lebby's offense. Blake Shapen is not as good as Dylan Gabriel, but he is a solid passer, a good decision maker, bit of a pea shooter for an arm, but can fit in to what this new offense looks like. So let me know what you guys think, and we'll talk more about what Baylor has to look at quarterback coming up, specifically Monday, but also throughout the week here. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. We're the only place that is giving you full, nonstop Baylor athletics exclusive content 5 days a week that's not coming straight from the university. My dogs in the chat now who are watching, we do have some more videos on Blake Shapen, not the least of which being the video before this one, Friday's episode of Locked On Baylor, if you guys want to know a little bit more about this new quarterback who's coming to play for the Dogs. All right, guys, we'll see you on Monday on Locked On Baylor.